Panthers traded for Ihmir Smith-Marsette. They traded for Ihmir Smith-Marsette. Now, the term trade here might be a little bit of a, I don't know, it might overstate the situation a bit.
Air quotes?
Yeah. Radio air quotes, you just say them out loud. Air quotes, they traded for Ihmir Smith-Marsette. But here's the thing. They traded for a receiver. They traded for a receiver who was kind of a darling of the preseason. Smith-Marsette hauled in 9 receptions, 195 yards, and 2 touchdowns this preseason, which makes him second in the NFL in receiving yards over the preseason. So he's somebody that the Chiefs utilized quite a bit in preseason. He's also a bit of a kick returner. This is two things, right? This is a Panthers move out of what they felt is necessity, and a Panthers move out of what they could potentially use as resource, right? It's a direct response to the injuries in the wide receiver room, and it's the most they could possibly do in response to the injuries in the wide receiver room. Right? Part of the decision, I'm sure, to trade for Ihmir Smith-Marsette is that the Panthers wanted to bring in depth and maybe even upgrade at a depth like wide receiver position, like upgrade at wide receiver 4 or whatever it is. Which makes sense when you see DJ Chark, who's, I guess, practicing in a limited capacity today, but that wasn't obvious. Terrace Marshall, who is practicing in a limited capacity, but that wasn't obvious. There's a decent amount of injury. Laviska Shenault, again, same thing. When the wide receivers started getting hurt, they started looking around going, I think we might need some more here.
Yeah.
And they may have looked at the bottom of their bench and said, Shi Smith and Derek Wright, is there anyone out there available? And they went to their front office, right? And they said, I think we need some wide receiver help. And their front office said, and what would you like us to do about that? We have no picks to trade. The players, I mean, we can't be giving up good players for depth at wide receiver. Like, seriously, what would you like us to do about that? And that's when they gave them like the Apollo 13, right? I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. It's not can you, it's find a way. So they went and swapped, if you will, conditional 7th rounders in 2025 to bring in Ihmir Smith-Marsette. Now that feels like it's like, fine, this is what I could do. We flipped our 7th rounders 2 years from now, and we brought in a guy who's been one of the best wide receivers in preseason, but is pretty unproven otherwise. Does that make you happy? Is that enough? They were out there looking to beg, borrow, and steal any wide receiver they could get. And they're probably still perusing the waiver wires looking for another name to answer to that question.
Oh, yeah.
Basically what they did for Smith-Marsette is they jumped line in the waivers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, flipping conditional 7th 2 years from now, that's them going from 9th in the waiver priority to 1st for one player, which I don't mind, right? I kind of like that move there, right? If there's somebody you like, go get them. Mm-hmm. I think about that in the draft a lot of times, where you'll see a team that has, 6 picks from rounds 5 to 7, and I go, all right, identify 2 guys that you want and combine picks to go get them, right? If you have to move up 5 picks, move up 5 picks. Don't settle, and that feels like what this was. They looked around, they said, all right, we're not loving Shi Smith, which he's essentially going to play a role that I thought Shi Smith was kind of penciled into, which is depth wide receiver and returner. If we don't love Shi Smith, this is someone we've identified through our scouting, through our evaluation process as someone that we like. We've been impressed with them this preseason. We could wait and, fingers crossed, hope they fall to us with the 9th waiver spot. We could put in the claim, or we could flop 7th round picks 2 years from now and eliminate the guessing game and go get our guy.
And it's a 0 risk because you didn't lose a pick. You're just swapping.
Swapped them. Exactly.
So, okay, you just moved down the draft a little bit to get a wide receiver. Okay, fine. You didn't lose anything.
And the other thing, like who knows, right? He's a player that the Chiefs are moving on from. I don't think because they don't like him, but because the Chiefs have stockpiled wide receivers a bit. Guys like Justin Ross are paying off. Mm-hmm. Justin Ross, who many remember from his freshman year at Clemson, then has been injury bogged down ever since. He made their 53. That's definitely someone that the Chiefs were like, I hope, but I'm not banking on it, right? Fingers crossed it works out. He's, 6'4" and runs like a deer. I'm all about it, but we shouldn't be depending on him panning out. So when he pans out, suddenly they have a couple extra wide receivers. Right? We're going to talk about maybe something like a running back out of Detroit, Mo Ibrahim, who you remember from Minnesota, meaning University of. Detroit is somewhere I would look for a running back to maybe be cut because they signed David Montgomery, they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. Like if you look at the strongest position groups in the league, guess what? They're probably a little crowded, which means a good player might get released, and you should be sniffing around there.
Like we saw with Bam Knight getting released from the New York Jets because
exact same.
You have Breece Hall coming back from injury, and they signed Dalvin Cook. They still have Michael Carter already. It's like someone's got to get pushed
Israel
out.
Banikonda.
Exactly.
Like that's a perfect example. Another one I think the Panthers should be paying attention to.
Absolutely.
Right? You sniff around the really, really good position groups in the league or the really, really deep position groups in the league, and there's a good chance something's going to, fall out of that tree. And that's where somebody like Smith-Marsette might end up because, everyone that has the option of, hey, I could play here, I could play with the Chiefs, they're probably picking the Chiefs if you're a wide receiver. Thus, there's going to be one or two extras. And they wanted to move. They wanted to get something in return for the player they created value in this preseason. Panthers gave them something.
I always find it interesting how, for example, Smith-Marsette gets traded for today. All of a sudden, here's Terrace Marshall Jr. back at practice. Here's DJ Chark getting some work at the side of practice. Like we saw earlier this offseason, or earlier in training camp, I should say, Keaton Mitchell, who played at East Carolina, pop off for a big-time run early in training camp on one of their preseason games. All of a sudden, J.K. Dobbins, hey, I'm off the PUP list, back at practice.
Dalvin Cook signs with the Jets. 12 hours later, Breece Hall's good enough to practice.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of stuff, it's footsteps, right? Actually, I was this is the type of sports nerd I am. I was watching the World Championships, the YouTube, the track and field championships.
Okay.
In the mixed 4x4. So two guys, two girls.
Okay.
There's Femke.
Didn't realize that existed, but all right.
Femke Boll, I think was her name. Some Norway maybe was the favorite, and the fastest woman in the 400 in the world had the lead, right? And USA was trying to track her down. She heard footsteps, right? There was the USA girl was coming up behind her, giving it all she had. Guess what happened? The fastest 400 woman in the world fell over. She very obviously was like, oh. Right? Heard the footsteps, tried to kick it into gear, didn't get her knees up and fell, and USA won. So that's kind of exactly what we're talking about, right? You hear footsteps, I'm good. I'm not hurt. I'm ready to play. You just traded for a wide receiver, DJ Chark. I'm good.